Hey everybody, welcome to the Adventist Hoops podcast. I'm here with Union College Warriors head men's basketball coach Drew Mekelburg. Drew, welcome to the Adventist Hoops podcast.
Thanks, Dustin. Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Drew, tell us a little bit about your story, where you're from, and your basketball journey that has led you to this point of being the head coach for the men at Union College for the past 4 or 5 seasons here.
So I have enjoyed athletics my whole life, and I was actually a baseball player growing up, really into baseball and stuff. As I got into middle school, though, and high school in the Adventist world, baseball isn't as big of a deal, and so basketball was kind of the next step, or the main sport that was available to me. And so I got pretty into basketball in middle school, and then high school. I was a basketball player for all 4 years, not on varsity, but part of that's because you wouldn't know it, but my freshman and sophomore year of high school, I was actually 5'2".
I was going to say you're pretty tall. How tall are you?
Yeah, so I'm 6'4".
Okay.
And so then between my sophomore and junior year, I had a growth spurt of ages and went from 5'2" to 5'4" in about 6-7 months. And but because of my height, I had to learn how to shoot because I couldn't do a whole lot underneath. So I became a shooter and broke a few records at CVA for 3-point shooting, and then came to Union a few years later and didn't try out for the team the first few years, but then my last 2 years I tried out for the team and was part of it, and it was one of the best experiences I've ever had.
So you're a local homegrown CVA is College View Academy there in Lincoln, Nebraska. Yes, and I just saw a video that was talking about Dwight Howard's growth from I think his freshman to sophomore year, and it was like 5'4" to 6'9" or something. Like it was a crazy growth spurt. So that's on the extreme side, but you can relate to that a little bit.
Yeah,
And
it's
and then
I
oh,
paid
go
for
ahead.
it later on, paid for it early on in my life, but then I was worried that all the pain that I went through wasn't going to pay off, but it did eventually.
And you ended up playing at Union.
Yeah, so I played 2 years at Union College as a shooting guard, point guard kind of combo under Ron Dodds, and then after that went into teaching. But I was an assistant for a few years under Ron, and then Aaron Perkypile took over for 2 years, and I was the head assistant for him. And then Aaron Perkypile stepped down, and I was there, and I took over from there.
Talk a little bit about the legacy of Ron Dodds. I lived in Denver for a few years and have a lot of friends there that played at Union, and they would always talk about him and the figure that he was there at Union College. Talk about his legacy and what he's meant to the Union College. Well, there wouldn't be a Union College basketball program without him.
You're 100% right. Ron Dodds is a figure for men's basketball here and the sports program in general. He is somebody who was a great motivator, and all of the quips and things are things that stick with people through life. And I have to be honest, while I would roll my eyes sometimes when he'd use them on me, I use them on my players now. And he really focused on the mental side of the game, and he also really focused on life. He wanted to teach life lessons through athletics. And that's something we're trying to carry on the legacy there, is teaching life lessons through athletics, giving athletes a safe place to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes before they go into the workforce and into the world and become leaders and impact other people.
And so now you find yourself as a leader there at Union College. How are you taking that legacy of Coach Dodds and putting your own new spin on it? What have you found that you have done, that you experienced as a player, that you wanted to make sure that your student athletes experience?
So I wanted them to experience what I experienced was a strong culture. Guys who really cared about each other, genuinely, not just in a cheesy team way, but I still have friends for life from there. Hopefully you get to talk to one of the guys. He helps coach up at Walla Walla, the women's coach, Caleb Allen. Shout out Caleb Allen. He and I were teammates together, and he and I still talk all the time. And so just creating great lasting relationships and memories, things that I'll never forget. But in a place where you really care about the people. You're not just there for basketball. You're there for the people. And so that's something that I've wanted to give back to these guys. But then also memories of competing at a high level. Not too often I mean, we talk 1% of the world gets a chance to do this, right? And so the ability to compete one last time at a very high level, and then you can go play rec basketball for the rest of your life. But the ability to compete at a high level and organized sport one last time is a memory that these guys will remember forever.
Well, it sounds like you've been building something special. I mean, you took over 4 seasons ago, and you're now, to be transparent, I think there weren't as many wins as you would have liked your first few years. But talk about there's a transformation that happened last year. I've done some research on all of our Adventist colleges, and there's only two men's programs that had winning records last year: Washington Adventist University and Union College. So talk about what has happened over the last season or so that's led to this big change.
So I got to give a lot of credit to the players on the team for their consistency. That was something that our teams had struggled with in the past, where they would play for 1 or 2 years and then they would no longer play. And so we found a group of guys that we really poured into, and they bought into the system that we were presenting to them. Uh, and they decided that they were going to stick it through all the way. And so that's been a huge deal. We've been able to develop our players from freshmen to seniors. And even when people maybe weren't getting the playing time that they were expecting, they still trusted that they were getting better and that their time would come. It's actually really been cool to see. I've had managers, because we have tryouts each year, and the guys who don't make it will oftentimes become managers. So that they can come in and learn and, maybe throw on their shoes every once in a while. But I have currently now two former managers on the team who have decided I am going to accept my role and I'm going to continue to work until my role gets bigger. And so I've got two guys currently on the team who are used to be managers. And then I also had formerly two freshmen who didn't come in and play as much as they wanted to, but they listened well to coaching. They took direction well. They bought into the system. And one went from a freshman with 20 minutes maybe total in a season to a starter the next year. And one the year before that, same thing. Freshman, 0 minutes into a starting position just because they bought in. So got to give my coaches and players a lot of credit for believing in the system, buying into it, and then developing as players. And that has paid dividends over time.
And those are characteristics that you want no matter who is a part of your program. I mean, whether it's an assistant coach, manager, one of your star players. I mean, if you have the grit and determination that you're not going to give up and that you're going to pursue it, I mean, that's something out of Rudy. You have a couple of real life Rudies on your team there. I have to ask you about some specific players because spending time in Denver, I got to know a little bit the Essex boys, and Blake Essex was just a kid when I would be around. We'd be playing pickup basketball, but he was always in the gym every week when the adults were playing. He was there, and I could just see his development. I moved away when he was in middle school, so I didn't get to see him play, but he's now a 6'9" man and is a pretty great player. So talk a little bit about Blake Essex.
Blake Essex is our Jokic. He sees the floor incredibly well. He is, like you said, he's the kind of player you want on your team. He knows how to put the ball in the bucket at a high rate, but he doesn't demand that. He just carries himself in the right way where it just comes naturally. And we hunt him, we try to find him, but he doesn't get upset when it doesn't work out. He's got a great head on his shoulders. He is just and he obviously brings a lot of attention, but he doesn't force it when that happens. He makes the right play. He makes good decisions. And I mean, you can't teach 6'9" either, though. So
Yeah. Well,
he
you
is.
also you also can't teach nearly 7 feet. And I wanted you also to just talk a little bit about Jan Barasa. I mean, how do you implement someone that's 7 feet tall?
Jan Barasa, man, he has been a blessing. It's actually a funny story. He was a student over in Africa at Maxwell, and our chaplain here went over for a visit, and he sent me an email with a picture in it, and he said, "Check out this tall guy. Wouldn't it be funny to have him on the team?" And I shot Jan an email and just kind of out of the blue said, "Jan, are you interested in coming out to Union College and playing college basketball?" And then I got Blake on his
Look
trail a
at you,
little
man.
bit.
International recruiting. Wow.
Yeah, and Jan took a major leap. I mean, that's a huge deal to not know anybody, and not know where you're going, never meeting the coaches, never meeting anybody. He came over and he'd tell you himself he wasn't the best basketball player, but again, you can't teach 7 feet. And so he has come a long way as a basketball player, and we're very excited about his sophomore year here and the developments that he's made.
I was going to say he's only had one season playing competitive organized basketball, I believe, because I know a couple people at Maxwell. I don't think they have a team that plays competitively. So that's amazing, and I look forward to seeing his progress this next year. When you think about the level of competitiveness, well, actually, let me ask about recruiting since we were on that. When you are looking at a potential prospect, whether they're in high school or college, what's the main thing? What's the first thing that you look for in someone as a player or a person?
I go back to culture. Are they somebody who is willing to buy into, kind of like we talked about, the process of I'm going to be here to get better and develop. Um, Even though somebody might beat me in practice that night, I have to cheer them on and praise them for that, while at the same time trying to win the next rep. Okay. So people who have, memories of a goldfish where they move on quickly from things, uh, but learn from their mistakes. And of course, we were looking for great shooters and we're looking for great athletes. But I have said no to a few great athletes because our culture is so important here. And we really value people who are going to buy into not just coaching, but the people around them, into Union College, because Union's a little different atmosphere than maybe other places. But it's an amazing place and you just have to buy into it. So people who are just willing to come in and do those things. And we really, like I said, we really protect our culture and find people who fit that well.
What role does finding Adventist athletes play in your recruiting process? Because to be transparent, a lot of our colleges, I wouldn't say that any of our schools throughout the last few decades have exclusively had Adventist players on their rosters, but it seems like there are a number, increasingly more teams that have maybe more Adventist, more non-Adventist than Adventist. What role or emphasis do you put on trying to recruit Adventist players?
Um, yeah, it's not the thing, but it is a big deal. Reason being is uh, I see basketball as a ministry, and this is a place, like I said, where we love to teach lessons and help people grow, and not just as people, but in their faith. And so when we have a few non-Adventist people on our team, and they're great guys, who knew there's good people who are non-Adventist, and but to bring them in and have this uh, Adventist thing around them is a great ministry to them as well, because I had a kid the other day. He texted me and, "Hey man, coach, I don't get this off. I just need you to pray for me," right? And
Wow.
those kinds of things. I mean, we're only 2 weeks into school here, and we've got kids already learning about what this is about. And so recruiting admins is a big deal because they can help minister to those who are maybe not from that background. And not that we're trying to fully convert people or anything. We're just trying to teach about the ministry of Jesus Christ and what he's done for us. And so the ability for our young men to do that for their own teammates is a big deal.
What role does your academy tournament that Union hosts play in kind of seeing what some of the players are like from the regional Adventist academies?
That's a huge deal. That's really my one chance to see those players play in person. Now that I'm working on campus, I'm hoping I can get chances to see these kids a little bit more. But before, when I worked in public school, this was my one chance to get to see them. Um, and so it's a huge deal to have these kids on campus, see them in person, because as coaches, we get hundreds of emails every week of here's my highlights, and it's easy to watch highlight clips, but to see somebody how they are acting in person, how they treat their teammates, how they react to things when they don't go their way. Like I said, we've built something special here with our culture, and to see that happen in real time is a big deal. So that high school tournament goes a long way for us.
You mentioned this is your first year on campus full time. I don't think I mentioned that this is your first year as athletic director as well. But I wanted to ask you about the highlights that you get sent, because I've heard some coaches actually request highlights, just send me a highlight tape. But I've also heard other coaches say, you know what, that's really okay. I'll just tell you, when I was in high school, I put together a highlight tape, and I didn't do it digitally with, on a computer editing. I actually played back tapes and pushed record on the VCR. Like, it took forever. Then I sent it to this coach, and he was like, oh man, this is really great. You probably spent a lot of time on this, but I really don't need this. I really need just one half. Like, send me your best half of basketball. Where do you fall on this spectrum of recruiting video?
I'm more on that end. Give
Yeah.
give me a half. And highlights are fine. It's fun to see, and it definitely highlights things that you're good at. But what I'm looking for is how do you play in a team setting? How are you working with your teammates? And these are also 95, 85, 90% of the time offensive highlights, right? And there's two halves of the game. And so that's another thing that we really try to preach here is the defensive end. And do you know how to play man to man? Have you only played zone? Those kinds of things. And I don't hold it against them. It's just things I like to know going into the recruitment process, uh, so that I know where we're starting at.
Do you find that there's a difference in experience and skill, even if it's mental skill, of Adventist players versus players that may have come from a public school program?
Um, Currently, no. We've got some really high level Adventist basketball players on our team right now that played some AAU. They played some high level leagues. Okay, so a couple guys from Texas, a couple guys in Colorado, and so they played some high level competition. So, but historically, yes, there was some difference. But I think the Adventist world is catching up a little bit in terms of um, coaching their kids the right way, teaching the right skills, um, and not that we were ever far behind. I think we've had great athletes. I think it's just that mental side of the game, learning how to play the game the right way. I think they're starting to catch up a little bit.
Absolutely. I mentioned that this is your first year as athletic director at Union. So, how has that been, trying to balance both of these roles? I mean, I'm sure it takes a little bit away from what you're able to do as the head basketball coach, but how has it been for you?
Yeah, so volleyball and soccer season are going right now, and we've got a golf team that's also going out on a meet next week. So they keep me busy. um, but I worked a full-time job before this as a PE teacher, and that kept me plenty busy too. So uh, I've learned the last 7 years how to kind of balance finding ways to get basketball in there. And so far, we're still on a good path. I definitely have spent less time on basketball this year than I would like to, but I know that my time's coming here once some of these other seasons kind of wind down. Uh, it'll just be basketball season at that point, so I'll get some more chances there to spend more time on basketball.
When you think about the overall program that you're in charge of now for Adventist athletics at Union College, and you think about Adventist athletics across North America, what do you think that our schools do athletically? I don't really have an answer for this. I'm thinking out loud, because I guess the reason I'm putting it this way is that I think that for some people in their mind, going to a top athletic program is going to be at a non-Adventist school somewhere. And disregarding the talent and scholarship money that's available at like a Division One NCAA school and that sort of thing, what would you say are the things that an Adventist athletic program does better, or being at an Adventist school that benefits a person as an athlete and a person, I should say?
Sure.
Is that a question that
Yeah.
makes any sense at all? I'm just wondering,
Yeah.
like, what do you think our Adventist schools do better than other schools that are out there?
So speaking from Union terms, especially, we're a smaller school. And so the attention you can get from professors and coaches is a lot more because you're not a number per se. You recognize a face here because you see the same faces all the time. So I think just the experience of a personal experience, I guess I would say, is something that Union does really well, and I think that our Adventist colleges do well, where you're known, and we're also just real with each other. At least on our team, we're very upfront, and we don't beat around the bush. When we're upset, we say we're upset. When we're down in the dumps, we try and figure these things out together. Um, and I'm sure, again, I haven't been on other big type of teams, so they still probably have those kinds of things. But I don't know if there's the kind of patience that there might be at a school where we're on a more personal level. We know you as people, not just as basketball players. And so I think that's a good way that we invest into our people. Um, but I also know that coaches everywhere just love their kids. So that's not to say that other schools don't. I just think that's something we might even do a little bit better.
I was talking to a high school kid the other day, and they were talking about different programs, different levels, and everything. And there is something to going somewhere where you can make a difference and where you can actually know everyone around you at a very deep level that you might not get in other places. So, anyway, I think you're right. I think there's a lot of great benefits of being at an Adventist school. What advice do you have for some of these players that might be coming to your to Union's Academy tournament this year, as they are considering playing in college, or hoping maybe to be able to play in college? What are you seeing that Academy kids could be working on if they want to make that jump to the next level?
Great question. So the biggest jump every year that freshmen come to me and say, Coach, this is different, is the physicality level. And that is hard to teach, depending on the level that you're playing, just because it's bigger, stronger athletes. And so the physicality level is just naturally going to grow. You're also going to see more man to man defense oftentimes at the college level. So I guess what I would encourage kids to do is get faster and stronger, but then also uh, learn different types of basketball, whether it be man, just watch the game and not just the NBA highlights or the things that show up on Instagram. Um,
Hey, what's
find,
wrong with highlights on Instagram, Drew? I don't know. I think that's
you
all
know,
right.
I'll say you post some good highlights on Instagram.
I'm
Uh,
just kidding. Absolutely, though, knowing the flow of the game and where you're at, away from the ball, being able to help defense. Yeah.
exactly. Just learning more about basketball because I had a friend once who did this. He said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you think you know about basketball? And I would probably guess that most players would say, I know I'm an 8 on that. And personally, as a coach, I would probably say I'm around a 3 or a 4, right? Like there's just so much detail and so much depth to basketball that we still have to learn and uncover. Um, and I've spent hours and hours and hours of watching film, breaking it down, not just my team, other team, and you start to recognize things and patterns, and it makes you want to go deeper because there's more to find. So recognizing that maybe you don't know it all and recognizing that you can keep getting better. So just, I guess, staying humble while at the same time having confidence in yourself, playing at a high level, and being willing to learn.
That's a great point, because a lot of our schools are playing zones. They're sitting on, one little spot on the court on defense. They have no idea how to cover a pick and roll in a man situation, or how to, break a 1-3-1, press. Or we mentioned the basketball immersion podcast that we listened to. And I don't know about you. I listen to some of these NBA assistant coaches, and they're throwing out terms I've never heard before. I mean, I literally don't know what they're talking about. And it just reminds you that, hey, there's always someone that's going to have more knowledge. So take it from coach and from me. I mean, if you're out there playing at a school, try to expand your knowledge a little bit. YouTube's a great resource to be able to learn what like different coverages and what different defenses are out there, and even different offenses, so that you can understand, what you might be asked to do more quickly once you get up to the college level.
Yeah, learning about basketball vocabulary, what it is to ice
Mm-hmm.
screens, what it is to go under, how do you play different coverages, like you mentioned in pick and roll defense. Um, that zone defense isn't just standing in a spot, right? You're essentially still playing man to man. You're just switching everything, and
Yeah.
so learning those things, learning the terminology, I think will go a long way. Obviously, you still want to work on your shooting. You want to work on good passing. You want to work on those things. Um, but the big thing I find myself teaching the most at this level is the mental side and
Mm-hmm.
let's learn about basketball so that when you go out on the floor and you see something, you've seen it before.
Yeah. That's great advice. Since we were talking a little bit about strategy just now, I mean, how do you utilize your height with Blake Essex in your offense? What kind of offensive sets? Where are you getting him the ball on the court?
So we run a continuity ball screen where the ball is trying to flip the floor a lot. And the reason we do that is because we want to keep the help away from Blake. They love to double. They love to uh, dig down. They love to try and poke away at the ball whenever he's got it. And so what we've done with that is we've surrounded him with shooters, and we teach our guys about spacing so that when the double comes, we're going to trust Blake to make the right decision. And then our guys are really good at cutting and really, really good at knocking down open shots. Derek Warren, really high level 3-point shooter. Garrett Fortney shot almost 38% last year from three. Dan Okemwa is an incredible point guard who moves the ball quickly, but then can also knock down open shots. Jaden Gibson, the lefty on the left side there, he'll come down, knock down open shots. So having those kinds of players surround him allows or forces the defense to make a choice. Are you going to go one-on-one in the post with a guy who is much smaller and not as strong as Blake, or are you going to double and let a 35% 3-point shooter shoot from outside?
And because of those shooters, you're not seeing zone that much, even though he's a force.
Yeah, we don't see it a ton. So Andrews played a little bit of zone against us last year. We had a few other colleges nearby, but their kind of main set defense is zone. But we've got a zone breaker in Dan Okemwa who goes into the high post and he can finish at a high level. And then it's tough to rebound out of a zone too. And Blake will kill people on the offensive rebounds when that happens. So yeah, we don't see a ton of zone, but we will see a little bit. But we got shooters to we like. I'll put this way: we love it when people play zone against us.
Right. Makes it easy. Inside out, open shots. Yeah. What about defensively? What's your philosophy?
I was actually just talking about the guys the other night. So the way I put it is we play team defense. Okay. Oftentimes when I say man to man, especially with guys who are new, again, the way that they've learned, and again, it's not their fault. It's just their thought is I've got to stop my man from scoring. And it's what I always say every year. It's not the man who scores, it's the ball. So we've got to be in help. And then we work on helping the helper. Okay. So when our shot blockers, Jan, Blake, Braden, when they slide over to help and stop the drive, who's protecting their man? Who's there to poke away that ball so that they don't get a layup? And so rotations behind it, really important. But the main thing we really try to focus on too is transition defense, getting back so that our defense is set. When our defense is set, we're really good at defending. But when we're back and we're in scramble situations, we can still defend at a high level, but it's much, much harder to do when we're doing that in a scramble situation. So we try and stay out of those scramble situations as much as possible. And a lot of that's in transition.
How do you find yourself, how do you prevent yourself from getting in that situation where you can't get set? What are the, obviously a long rebound, there's not much you can do about that, but what are some preventable situations that you try to get better at with your guys?
So we work on how we close out. And it's actually kind of funny in the basketball world right now. There's a divide on how we teach closeouts. Do you get to the ball as fast as you can, or do you chop your feet? Right now, we're teaching guys to sprint to the ball and stop in a athletic way, and that's actually been a really positive thing for us. But then we're also trying to teach guys to close out to weak hands. Okay, so if we're going to get beat on a closeout, we want them to drive with their weak hand, because 9 times out of 10, that's going to be a forced shot or a pass. And so they're not going to get all the way to the rim. And if they do, it won't be as quick or as natural. And our shot blockers behind it can help prevent that. So we teach closeouts to the weak hand, or to the strong hand, so that they go to their weak hand.
Sure. Yeah.
It also allows a more contested shot when they close out to the strong hand.
Yeah. There's been chopping the feet on a closeout. It makes sense in theory, but in reality, sometimes you gotta pull out of that to, your guy's going, or how are you going to get up to actually contest that shot if he does start shooting it when you're
Well,
down so low?
and I would challenge anybody to go out and watch film and find me 10 clips of people actually closing out that way.
Yeah.
Um,
If
it
they
just
if they
doesn't.
are, they're like the golden boy of all, or girl of all the coaches out there. Here it is. Here it was. But you're right. I mean, in reality,
Right.
you're watching
And
people
there
close
are
out, and
people who
it's
can do that at a high level. And if that is the way that you close out, by all means, go do it. If that's what feels the most athletic and the way that you can get from point to point as quickly as possible. But we have found that 1 out of 50 of our guys are really can do that at a high level.
yeah.
And so we'll teach, get there as fast as you can and stop in an athletic way so that you can stay with the ball as they drive.
If we're talking about perennial no-nos or things that you should do that are starting to change, what do you think about jump passes? Leaving your feet to make a pass, because that's always the cardinal rule. You don't do that.
You know, um, I guess here's what I'll say. Uh, if you are making a right read and that's just the way you can get the ball there, I'm for it. But 9 times out of 10, I'm in trouble and I got to get rid of this ball. And so
It's like, if it works out, I won't say anything, but you do it at your own risk, because if it doesn't, you'll probably hear about it.
that's right. Yeah, yeah,
Okay, one
it's
one
something.
more traditional teaching, and that is on a pick and roll screener. Are they opening up to the ball, or are they turning their back and just diving to the basket?
So it depends on the coverage. So we're going to teach the coverage. So if a defender is going to go over the screen, then we're going to dive immediately, and force the screener's defender to make a choice between the ball handler and the roller. If they get caught on the screen or go under, then we're going to turn up and open up
Steal
and
and
face to the ball and
slide down. Yeah.
box them out and then go with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's
Okay.
what we coach. Again, a lot of what we do here is based on reads and decision making. I think I would hope that that's what some of these guys would say we harp on the most is decision making. We coached a lot of decision making.
Um, you mentioned playing Andrews. How special has it been in your experience as a head coach to be able to coach against other Adventist colleges? How important is that, do you think, for Adventist basketball to have those matchups?
I don't think it's necessarily critical, but I think it's special. I think our programs still work without it, but the ability, in the same way that we have our high school tournaments, you see relationships built even over just a few days, and friendships that are made. I know that a lot of our guys know quite a few guys from the Andrews team or the Southwestern team. And while they probably aren't best friends, if they saw him in person, they would talk to him. They'd say, "Hey, what's up?" Um, and that connection of that Adventist background, I think, goes a long ways. And so it's a very special and surreal time when we do get to do that. Um, and I think the three of us, the three of our teams especially, we've done just a really nice job of competing at a high level, but keeping it, understanding the bigger picture, and that it's not about who is the best team here, who's better than who, whatever. It's about the relationship, the memories, and just the honor to play basketball in Adventist school.
All right, what do you think? Adventist Hoops Super Tournament, maybe like 2025. I put it together. Is Union going to come?
You know what? If it's put together, we would certainly take a look.
Well, I am not signing up for that right now. I'm just, how cool would that be though, to have all the colleges get together for a big tournament? I think that'd be cool. I would want to see that. Um, real quick, I forgot to ask you earlier, talk about the athletic association that Union plays in and how it relates to other associations out there.
Sorry, you broke up a little bit.
Talk about the athletic association that Union plays in and how it relates or compares to other associations that are out there.
Are you talking about ACCA? Sorry,
Yes, 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 yes.
okay. So yeah, ACCA actually reminds me a lot of a Union tournament experience where we'll play a few of the teams throughout the year, basically some of the ones who are closer. But then what it gives opportunity for is teams from across the country who maybe don't get to play in their own end of season tournament or aren't a part of a NAIA type of thing. They come together and have this kind of Christian community.
And what does
And
it
we
stand for? Again, it's
uh,
sorry.
Association of Christian College Athletics.
Okay.
And I'm actually really excited about this year's tournament. It's going to be held up in Minneapolis, and it lines up with the NCCAA, the National Christian College Athletic Association National Tournament. And the idea behind it is that the teams who don't make the national tournament can then still plan to go up there and treat this as an NIT sort of situation.
Yeah.
And so we're really hopeful that we might have a pretty big turnout this year up there at Faith Lutheran Baptist College, Bible College.
It's exciting. It's exciting to have a end of year tournament like that. That is really great.
Yeah, something to look forward to.
Well, listen, Drew, I just have one more question for you, and it just is, what has basketball given to you over the course of your life?
It's given me a lot of memories. It has taught me a lot of life lessons. It's given me a chance to be mentored from people who I really respect. But then also it's given me a chance to give back and have a ministry that I believe in, and also that I'm passionate about. I think that's something that's really cool about athletics is when used appropriately and used with the right platform, it truly is a ministry and it truly is a way to build and grow leaders. And I can speak for myself that happened for me. And I'm really excited for the guys we have coming up here where I'll be sad that they're going to leave, but the things that they're going to do past here will be way bigger than basketball. But I'm excited to hear about how basketball shaped some of those experiences for them. And that's what gets exciting for me.
That is awesome. Well, Drew, thank you so much. Really rooting for you for this next season at Union College, and nothing but the best for you for this next year.
Thanks, Dustin. I appreciate it. Yeah, love what you're doing and excited to see more, and hope we can continue to grow the game within the Adventist realm.